Hi everyone, welcome to the third webinar in our 2019 AIOps Buyer Guide webinar series, the AIOps RFP, What Not to Forget. Thank you for joining. My name is Leila and I'm very pleased to introduce our solutions engineer, Tim McGraw, who will be presenting this webinar.
Thank you, Leila. How are you today?
Doing very well.
Excellent. Welcome to the webinar. My name is Tim McGraw. I'm a solutions engineer for Loom System. I'm also a former customer as an IT director in a national bike share operation company. I discovered Loom a couple of years ago and thought that's about where I would expect the technology to be. And so I bought it, and in working with the team, I grew to appreciate their approach. And in 2015, I asked them if I could join them. They created this position for me, and so I've been working here ever since. But as a director of IT and systems administrator for most of my career, I'm pretty familiar with the problems that most of you are probably facing. And so that's one of the reasons why I like this job. And what we're going to talk about today is exactly along those lines. With me, or I should say not with me today, is Mark Rusinski, my colleague and another solutions engineer at Loom. He is fantastically and outrageously celebrating the birth of his first child. So we wish him well, and we'll welcome him back to future webinars. But for today, you're stuck with me, I'm sorry to say. So I'll try to keep things interesting and moving them along. And I think you'll find that you'll have plenty of time for questions and reflection when we're done. But we'll also send you this, right, Leila, as a PDF at the end. Wonderful, great. So let's talk a little bit about this webinar series. Thank you for attending today. This is part of the AIOps 2019 Buyer Guide webinar series. This is the fourth out of five? Third out of fourth event. You can see the next one is 10 IT systems you can consolidate with AIOps. That's in 2 weeks. That's the final one of the series. But I think there's another series coming up. Leila, do you know the details on that?
That's right. Starting Tuesday, March 19th, we'll be launching another series of 4 webinars. And our first one will be, Is Your Organization Ready for AIOps? On Tuesday, March 19th, same time as today.
Awesome. And when will the registration for that open?
Starting next week, and we will notify you by email as well.
Great.
So stay tuned.
Okay, thanks. And then you can see there that we have 2 on-demand webinars that are available at www.loomsystems.com/webinars. One is what ROI to expect from AIOps, and the other is how to quantify the benefits of AIOps. That is a really good resource if you're looking to put some numbers to the task. And today we're going to talk more about putting the details to the task. And so we're going to start with just a review of what is AIOps actually. So if you're coming to this for the first time and you're thinking like, I know this is going to hit, but I don't know anything about it, we'll give you sort of the baseline for it. Then we're going to talk about some of the core capabilities that you should expect an AIOps tool to give you. And so that's why we decided to host this particular webinar, because we know that you're looking at different products. We know that there are a lot of products out there in the market, and each one has a slightly different approach. So how do you know what to ask if you've never done this before? And how do you know what to expect in terms of what AIOps in your environment is actually going to mean? So we're going to cover all of that today very quickly, but we'll leave some time at the end for next steps and Q&A. And Leila will help me moderate that. So please feel free to submit Q&A in the Q&A section of the Zoom meeting anytime, and she'll curate those and make sure that we get to hopefully all of them by the end.
Yeah, hopefully.
Thanks. So first, a little bit about Loom's mission. Loom is an AIOps tool. We improve the customer experience by predicting and preventing incidents. So if you have a lot of logs flowing around in your enterprise and you're managing them through manual searches and you're reactive and your customers are telling you what's going wrong first, this is exactly the kind of thing that Loom can help with. Loom's design is to bring those detections to you before your customers know about it, as well as to help you fix those incidents with some insights and action items that you might take when they come up. So that's a little bit of a lead into what actually AIOps is. You can think of it basically as using AI in the DevOps environment to make sure that your ops is optimized, and you're making sure that you're addressing problems as they come up before they become affecting of your business and before your customers know about them. We have a playbook that we created and are very proud of called the AIOps Playbook. It's in 6 steps. You can see it on the right there. It is based on the software development lifecycle. So if you're familiar with that, then you'll recognize it. And it is basically our recipe for success. Within that, we have documentation and steps along the way to make sure that everything in your environment is brought forward as you deploy AIOps in your systems. And as you'll see, it starts to affect a lot of your organization. It's very, it's very deeply integrated with what you're doing, and that's where its power comes from. So let's dig into some of the topics as though you were actually thinking about creating an RFP to send around to some AIOps vendors to get their answers. So in the coming slides, you're going to see a lot of general topics, and I'll talk about those. I'm not going to read the slides to you. I'm going to talk about them from kind of a high level. And while you're listening, you can sort of read the details there, and you can think about how relevant they are to your organization, whether you would add or change that. And then I'd love to hear your feedback on the end of that, beyond any questions that you have. If you have recommendations, if you have thoughts, if you have best practices, I'm sure everyone would love to hear it. So let's start first with usability and security. This is important because this is going to be needed for any RFP probably that you're going to issue for any kind of product. And this really sets the tone for a recurring theme that I'm going to talk about in today's webinar, which is playing nice in your environment. You know, a lot of people come to us and they think that our AI is like a Siri or an Alexa. It's an artificial general intelligence, and they expect to have fancy conversations and ask silly questions and joke back and forth. But AIOps is actually a much more serious, purpose-built approach. As we'll see a little bit later in the slides, it is a very powerful mechanism with which you can get a handle on everything that's going on in your environment. And that's what you need in order to have rapid response and to decrease that mean time to resolution for the incidents that you're looking at in your environment. So the first thing that an AIOps tool needs to be able to do is integrate with your existing environment without causing you a lot of headaches. It has to be able to be installed in such a way that you're going to be able to interact with it. So it has to have a good UI. It has to be able to integrate with your existing security. It has to have role-based access control, because if you're managing IT at a large enterprise environment, you need to have some sort of notion of access control. So these are all questions that you're probably used to asking in your RFPs already, but we include them for the sake of being comprehensive, and we include them in case there's anything that might spring to mind that, along with your AIOps deployment, you might actually need to add in terms of productivity or monitoring or user access. So beyond that, we have the domain fit. We want to make sure that whatever is going to be introduced into your environment, to the extent possible, already knows about that environment that it's going into. It's worth asking your AIOps candidates, is this something that comes pre-fitted in your product, or is it something that we're going to have to teach it? A lot of AIOps is about teaching, a lot of AI is about teaching. And so you're going to get a sense of what's needed, but you're also going to want to get a sense for all of the products that you review of what they're going to bring to you sort of out of the box. It's good to give you a starting point, and it's good to give you a sense of what you're going to need to do in an ongoing basis, and that's where the maintainability comes in, where your data scientists are going to want to know how much of this, how much of my time is this going to take, how much attention am I going to have to spend on it, and you'll want to get a comparison of those metrics as you get started. Once you know kind of the basics about how you're going to be bringing that system in and whether it can, your users can get access to it, then you're going to want to connect data to it. And along those lines, again, you want to know that you're going to be able to connect all of those sources of data with minimally invasive methods. So what kind of native adapters and integrations are offered by your AIOps tool? Do they match with what you already have in your environment? Are they going to require you to add agents? Are they going to require you to install agents as a service on thousands of servers? Or can they connect to a variety of data sources natively? And will they be able to work with what you've already got going on in your environment? To the extent that you're going to need to install things, and sometimes that's inevitable, and we all accept that as part of being in IT, then you'll want to know, if I have to do that, is it going to be easy to do it? So are there templates? Do you have the capability to add something? Is there a wizard that I can follow? Can I do it myself? Do I need help doing it? If I need help doing it, do you offer that as a service level component of the product that you're selling? All of these kinds of things about, like, who's responsible for what, how do we get this data connected, what type of data can be ingested, is there anything that's off the table, is there anything that I might try to stream to you that might for one reason or another not be possible to monitor. These are all questions that you want to ask of your AIOps candidates. Continuing on the theme of ingesting data across your environment, you'll want to make sure that all of the data that you're bringing in can be contributing to the monitoring that you're doing in your system. So you might have alerts coming from other systems. You want to ask if, beyond just incorporating the logs, you can also incorporate alerts from other systems. So in that regard, we're getting toward a manager of managers kind of a solution where you're ingesting everything. Some systems can do it, some tools can't, but it's worthwhile asking the question so that you can get another point of comparison to make the right decision when you purchase. The solution being limited to common third-party service monitoring or versus proprietary applications is especially important when you have proprietary web applications, for example, or you have a proprietary workflow where you're tracking, for example, an order number all the way through the system, and you want to see where that order number runs into problems. So a healthy focus on the actual problems that you're trying to solve will help you derive good questions that you should absolutely include in the RFP. And then finally, you want to know kind of what's the turnaround time? How fast am I going to start to see alerts and reactions to the data that I'm streaming in? Of course, that depends on how much data you provide an AIOps tool, but it also depends on how the tool is configured and what's expected of it. Some tools will require you to stream the data in and then to configure them to tell them what to alert on. AIOps tools more typically will try to allow you to bring data in, and then we'll give you something back without a lot of effort on your part. So you're going to want to know exactly what that level of effort is and exactly how soon you're going to start to see a return on that investment. Once the data's come in to your AIOps product, then you're going to want to know what that product is going to be able to do with it. So it's a good idea to ask what algorithms are being used. Some approach it with different ways. Some use neural networks, some use a host of different algorithms. And what's important here is that you have the ability to decide which is the most appropriate approach for your use case or your range of use cases. So it's a good idea to get a handle on that. Even if you don't know a lot about machine learning yourself, you can at least get some comparisons, and you can hear from the AIOps candidates what their approach is to it, and you can learn a lot just from that. So you want some predictive capabilities. Probably if you didn't, you wouldn't be looking at AIOps. And so that's something that you're going to have to ask about in terms of, if I give this amount of data to the AIOps tool, what's it going to give me back? What do I have to give it in order to get meaningful alerts back? Is it going to be able to ingest this data and do something with it out of the box? Is it something that's going to require a lot of work? Do I have to configure it? Does it need raw data? Can it use different kinds of data? And so that's what these questions are primarily getting at. Beyond that, though, you probably have some notion of manual log analysis that you've been doing. Some of our customers don't have any log monitoring in place, and they're just searching the logs manually. Some of our customers have made big investments in the previous generation of tools that allow you to ingest your events and then manually create alerting. And those people particularly are interested in features relating to their being able to manually create alerting capabilities. Because after all, if you've invested a lot of time, you don't want to have to give all of that up and hand everything over to an AIOps tool. You want to gain the best of what the AIOps tool offers you, but you want to be able to carry forward your wisdom and your investment as well. So it's very important that whatever AIOps tool you choose gives you a clear sense of how they're going to carry you forward and allow you to continue to benefit from that investment you've already made. And now that logs are coming in, then you're going to be looking at how well they're being parsed, how well they're producing alerts, and that's what we've covered up till now. But now that you've got good alerts, now you're getting to the heart of the matter. Now you're going to be looking at, now that I'm seeing these detections, help me actually get to the root cause of what's going on. So here are a couple of questions that you can include in your RFP that will help you tease out from those AIOps candidates how they're actually approaching root cause analysis. Are they giving you insights? Are they even attempting to tell you what the actual root cause is? Can they give you related textual log lines? So in other words, if an alert is detected, are they also giving you the deepest level of detail along with that alert so that you can research it? And if so, how granular, in other words, what kind of details are being pulled out of that? Are they giving you things like the list of host names that were involved in a particular incident, or the list of users, or the list of order IDs? Can you trace through an event whether a particular order ID makes it to a certain point in the flow and then falls off? Is that easy to see? In other words, how much manual extension of that do you have to do? Or is everything available in the log stream condensed and analyzed and provided for you? That can give you a very good idea of how far the AIOps tool can take the data after you stream it in. And that's a good thing to focus on. Now, continuing on with the notion of root cause, we have basically what I just described, which is how much is the tool teasing out of the data that you're providing it. And then the next step is that now you've analyzed all of those log events. Now you want to know, okay, I've got this incident going on in my environment. What do I do with it? So is there an error base or a knowledge base that I can refer to? A good example of this would be in MS events for Microsoft, you'll often have an event ID. And that event ID, for those of you who have done manual searches, I'm sure you're smiling to yourself that it's very nice to have an event ID to associate, because when you do those searches, you know that you've got the right knowledge base article that's going to help you solve that. Well, that's all available online. It's all very well known. So your AIOps capability should be able to make some use of that. They should be able to show you when an event ID of a certain number comes up, that this is what it means and this is what you could try to solve it. And if your AIOps capability has that built in, then of course that saves you or your staff the time of searching it and deciding what to do about it. There you're speaking directly to the mean time to resolution, for example. So additional things in terms of probable cause that we can talk about are built-in incident resolution out of the box. So not just are they connecting to a knowledge base, but are these things built into the product as it is installed in your environment? Is this something that you have to add yourself? Is this something that you have to cultivate and update yourself? Or is this just part of the native product? Once you have a handle on that, then you can turn your attention more to how you are going to interact with the product itself, what it's going to require of you, what kind of options it gives you. And so that's where the supervised and unsupervised learning comes in, tuning the machine learning as it works in your environment. How does it evolve? How do you provide feedback to it? How does it change as your data needs change? For those of you who are familiar with machine learning, you're probably recognizing supervised learning as something that's related to tagging. So if you know about machine learning already, you can dig down into the details of the machine learning approach and ask that as part of your RFP. Do you allow tagging to be added to incoming log events so that I can enrich the data, so that I can say, you know, hey, this is Tim's MS stack versus this is Layla's MS stack. And then that gives you a sense of how customizable the product is for your environment and how much you can tune it so that you can get to precisely the kind of machine learning analysis that you want to get. Unsupervised, of course, is just, you know, you set the machine learning algorithm up and let it go. But then along with that, you need to be able to tune it from time to time with some feedback. So you want to be very clear from your AIOps vendor as to what's going to be required from you and how you're going to be brought up to speed on that process. Do they just give you a product and expect you to take it over and learn how to do it? Or is there a transition period as the machine learning comes up to speed? And you want to know kind of how all of that's handled. So that's determining probable root cause. I'm going to speed up a little bit here to make sure that there is some time left for questions. But if you see anything on the screen that you'd like to come back to, simply submit a question and we'll be happy to talk about it in more depth during the Q&A. So your AIOps tool should be able to correlate. After all, the whole point of an AIOps tool is to help you monitor your environment. That doesn't mean a portion of your environment. It means your entire environment. But if it's going to be monitoring your entire environment and an alert pops up in one area, you want to know if that alert is affecting performance in some other area. And that is where correlations are absolutely necessary. So you want to know if the tool can do correlators. You want to know how those correlators are set up. Do they come pre-populated? Do they allow noise alert and suppression capabilities? Can we alert on one part of the stack and not alert on another part of the stack if that's the way it's important for my system to work? And you want to know how much control over these you have. Once all of these come together, then you're really talking about these components working to contribute to a reduction in MTTR, right? That's really what everybody wants out of AIOps. You want to know what's going on in your environment so that you can address those problems more quickly. So you want to ask your AIOps candidates, do you have an estimate based on your experience with other customers and your history, how much your product is going to help me with this? And then you want to ask, beyond just the numbers and the estimate, what are the actual capabilities that support the reduction of MTTR? What's going on there that you're going to give me that will allow me to solve my problems more quickly? And there can be a variety of approaches, all of which we'll be happy to talk to you about, but they go beyond the scope of the RFP webinar. So you'll have to follow up with us for that. So now that you've gotten your alerts coming into the system and everything is set up and it's giving you good alerts and good insights and actions, and you and your team know what to do with this stuff, now you're probably thinking about, how does the product of my AIOps capability get reintegrated into my system? So first we talked about your AIOps tool playing nice with respect to your legacy systems, sending data into it. But how about how those systems are going to work as your AIOps capability sends alerts and information out? So if it's got a handle on something that's going wrong in your environment and it knows how to fix it, what does it do with that information, right? Who does it tell? And so we have basically two paths along those lines that you should be thinking about. One is to have it communicate with people. So your ITSM solution, your service management, so that people can look at it and it can create a ticket for them to review. Again, this is where some of those people never need to log into your AIOps tool at all. They're simply receiving through your ITSM tool or through Slack, for example, or email alerts that are happening and some information about what to do with them. And then the more forward-looking and more automated process of where we're looking at like RPA, and we're having your AIOps capability drive automatic remediation of detections. Those are the two prongs that you're going to want to think about, and you want to know what any AIOps capability offers you in that regard. Maybe you're not quite ready to do automated remediation yet. That's perfectly fine. A lot of customers aren't. But you can certainly ask the question in an RFP, and so we encourage you to do that. So you can ask some specific questions, some samples of which are available here. Do you have RPA? Do you integrate with a specific ITSM product like ServiceNow, for example? Do you support other notification types? So depending on what your legacy systems require, you should include those, of course, and don't sell yourself short, because a lot of AIOps vendors will be willing to do some custom integrations for you, even if you have some old legacy products in your environment. So I burned through that pretty quickly. I've been talking nonstop for at least a half an hour now. So thank you for your patience with that. I hope you're still awake on the other side. I know that we have some good questions, but before I turn it over to Layla to help me answer some of those, I just want to talk about next steps. So you can get a full AIOps RFP to fit your environment. And Layla, I believe we're going to send that out along with the deck. And of course, our emails are there. Mark will be back at work, not today, but very soon, I'm sure. But in the meantime, you can email me. I'll be happy to help. And don't forget, again, our next webinar on the 19th, 2 weeks from now, 10 IT systems you can consolidate with an AIOps solution. I bet you're already thinking of 2 or 3 in your environment that might be candidates. So please go to www.loomsystems.com/webinars and register for that. And we'll see you there in 2 weeks. Meanwhile, let's get to the Q&A.
All right, Tim, let's just jump right in.
Great.
First question, how many staff should I expect to have to hire to implement AIOps well?
Interesting. That's something that you could absolutely include in the RFP. I think different AIOps tools would have different assumptions about what you can do there. Based on my experience, I hear larger enterprise customers typically saying that they can go to anywhere from 30% to 50% staffing in terms of actual research and remediation, which is not to say that they're cutting the staff by that amount. What we hear most often is that they're interested in repurposing that staff, because often the people doing the research are the L2 and L3 people, and those are the ones who need to be focused on other potentially more strategic things. So I think 30 to 50% is a good baseline number to think about in terms of the reduction in time that your FTEs are going to have to spend once an AIOps is in the environment.
Awesome.
Good question.
Next one, how long will it take for a product like this to show ROI?
That's definitely something that you want to ask as part of the RFP as well. And we kind of mentioned that a little bit, but I think this is probably getting more to, once I've connected the data, when am I actually going to receive some benefit from it? And so for large organizations that are connecting us to problematic data at the start, we typically see meaningful incidents within the first 24 to 48 hours. That's for us particularly. Normally, I speak more generally in a webinar like this about what the tools will do. I can't speak to what the other tools will do, but my guess is that if you include it in your RFP, you're going to get a range of answers. But you can use Looms as a benchline, and that would be 24 to 48 hours.
Great. Should I expect an AIOps tool to be able to do its own correlation?
Do its own correlation. Absolutely, absolutely. A log is a log is a log, right? And it may come in different formats, and it may have very different messages, or it may be tracking very different metrics. But there are some things about environments that we know about. We know that there's going to be a timestamp in that log. That's a great correlator just right out of the box. If something is happening across your stack at the same time, odds are it's related. So an AIOps tool should be able to bring those together and present them to you in such a way that you don't have to do the research to see that they're interrelated, right? But there are lots of other correlators that should be just prepackaged right out of the box. Host name is a big one. You should be asking if your AIOps tool has a notion of keywords. So if the not just severity or the keyword of error shows up, but other keywords might show up. Failure or inaccessible or disconnected. Look, there's lots of stuff that IT experts are really familiar with seeing in their logs. And so all of those things should be built into a responsible AIOps tool at the outset, but they should also allow you to customize them as well.
Awesome. Jumping to the next question. Someone's saying, we currently have no monitoring in place and are manually reviewing our logs. What kind of ROI can we expect going back to ROI?
Yeah, that'll be among the biggest jumps that we see, because in monitoring your logs manually, you're spending a lot of time doing that research, and you're having to do the correlations manually yourself. And so typically we hear from customers that the mean time to resolution for P1 level incidents, that is, real all hands on deck kind of outage level occurrences, is anywhere from 4 hours on up from there. And that can cost, 6 digits or more per minute for a large enterprise to have that kind of an outage. So typically when we're looking at a candidate that's going from 0 to 60, we can get that data connected pretty quickly, and they can start to have a handle on what's going on in the environment, certainly during the POC phase. But I would say very conservatively, they could start to see a return on the investment within 2 weeks to a month.
So there we go for the last question of the day. Will integrating with our ticketing system increase the load on our support staff?
Oh yeah, I see where that question is coming from. So if you put AIOps into your environment and now it's producing alerts, and your customers are still producing alerts, that is submitting tickets, then is the service team going to be swamped, I think is where that question is going. And so actually what will start to happen is that if you do that integration, the AIOps tool should be detecting and producing tickets ahead of the customers, because it's going to be looking at what's going on in your environment, and it should be able to tell you from the logs what's actually happening. And that will bring those things to the service team's attention in such a way that if they solve those, then there should be a decrease in the customer tickets that result in that. So on the whole, it should be a decrease. In the beginning, it might be a slight increase because your AIOps tool might be alerting on some things that you didn't know were going on in your environment. And that's good, because you want to get a handle on that stuff. You don't know what it's affecting. Great. Thanks, Leila.
Thank you.
Have a great day. Thank you for attending.
Visit loomsystem.com to create your trial account and learn about your infrastructure's complete story today.